My name is Irene Woulette. I'm 31 years old and I am a trauma surgeon. 5 years ago, my sister told my parents I had dropped out of medical school. It was a lie. One phone call, 15 minutes, and just like that, I lost my entire family. They cut me off, blocked my number, skipped my graduation, missed my wedding. For 5 years, I was no one's daughter. And then, last month, an ambulance brought my past through the sliding doors of my emergency room. The trauma team paged me. I scrubbed in. And when I walked out of that operating room in my white coat, my name embroidered across the chest, my mother was sitting in the hallway. She looked up, read my name, and grabbed my father's arm so hard it left bruises. What happened in that trauma bay, and what my mother did when the truth finally caught up with her, changed everything. Before we get into this, if you end up connecting with this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if it truly resonates with you. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from right now. Now let me take you back to the fall of 2020, to a kitchen table in Ridgemont, Ohio, and the last time my father ever called me his little doctor. I was 25, sitting in the medical library at Ohio State, 3 highlighters deep into renal pathophysiology, when my phone lit up. Mom. She never called during the week. I picked up on the second ring. Monica told us everything. Her voice was flat, cold in a way I'd never heard before. How long were you going to keep lying to us, Irene? I closed my textbook, my chest tightened. Lying about what? You dropped out 6 months ago. Monica says you've been living with some boyfriend, running up debt, pretending you're still enrolled. The words didn't make sense. I was looking at my student ID badge sitting on top of my anatomy atlas. My name, my photo. The College of Medicine logo stamped in the corner. Mom, I'm literally in the library right now. I have an exam in 4 days. Your sister was in tears for an hour. She was shaking. Why would she make something like that up about her own sister? I opened my mouth. Nothing useful came out. My brain couldn't process it fast enough. The accusation, the conviction already baked into her voice, the absolute certainty that Monica, my older sister, would never fabricate something this enormous. Mom, I can send you my transcript. I can have the registrar. Don't call this house until you're ready to tell the truth. She hung up. I sat there for 10 seconds, maybe 15, staring at the call log. Then I called back. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. Texted Dad. Mom just called. Something's wrong. Monica is lying. Please call me. The message delivered. No reply. I called Dad's cell. One ring. Then nothing. They'd blocked my number. Both of them. In under 15 minutes. I called 14 times in 7 days. Every single one went unanswered. On day 2, I emailed Mom a screenshot of my current semester transcript. 4 courses, 3 A's, 1 A- in biochemistry. I attached my enrollment verification letter from the registrar's office, time-stamped that morning. Subject line, please just look at this. She never opened it. Day 3, I called Aunt Ruth, Mom's younger sister, the one person in the family who'd always shot straight with me. Ruth picked up on the first ring. Sweetheart, I already tried. I called your mother this morning. And? She said, Ruth, don't let her drag you into her mess. Monica has no reason to lie about her own sister. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel of my car, parked outside a Wendy's because I couldn't afford real food, and the library Wi-Fi didn't reach the lot. What do I do? You keep going, you take your exam, and when it's over, you drive home and stand in front of them. So that's what I did. I took my Step 2 clinical skills exam, the one you can't reschedule without losing an entire year of progress. And the morning after, I drove 8 hours from Columbus to Ridgemont. I pulled into the driveway at 4 p.m. on a Sunday. Dad's truck was in the garage. Mom's sedan was by the mailbox. I walked to the front door, knocked, waited, knocked again, rang the doorbell. I could hear the TV through the window. A football game. The volume turned up too high, the way Dad always played it. Nobody opened the door. I stood on that porch for 40 minutes. The October wind cut through my jacket. The neighbors across the street pulled their curtains shut. Then I got back in my car and drove 8 hours home. That night, I sat in my car in the parking garage under my apartment building. The engine was off. The overhead light had timed out. I called Aunt Ruth one last time. "They didn't open the door," I said. She was quiet for a long time, then, "I know, honey. I sent the transcripts. I sent the enrollment letter. I drove 8 hours. They didn't even look through the window." "I know." I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve. My throat ached from holding everything down during the drive. "I can't keep begging people to believe me, Aunt Ruth. I can't keep proving I exist." "Then stop," she said softly. "Not because they deserve your silence, but because you deserve to stop bleeding for people who won't hand you a bandage." I opened my call log, scrolled through the last 7 days. 14 outgoing calls to Mom, 9 to Dad, 3 to Monica. Those she'd declined manually, which meant she saw my name and pressed the button. No missed calls coming back. Not one. I stared at that empty list for a long time. Then I locked my phone, got out of the car, and went upstairs. That night, I didn't lose my family. I realized I'd already lost them the moment they chose a comfortable lie over their own daughter. All I'd been doing for a week was trying to resuscitate something that had already flatlined. I went back to school. I studied. I passed Step 2 with a score in the 93rd percentile. I matched into a surgical residency. I did all of that with an empty contact list and a savings account running on fumes and student loans. I didn't know yet what Monica had told them after I stopped calling. I wouldn't know for 5 more years. Let me walk you through 5 years in under a minute. I graduated from medical school in the spring of 2021. The ceremony was in a gymnasium that smelled like floor wax and ambition. I wore the green hood for Doctor of Medicine. Aunt Ruth sat in the front row. She'd flown in from Pittsburgh the night before, booked a hotel she couldn't really afford, and clapped so loudly that the family behind her leaned away. The 2 chairs beside her were empty. She'd draped her coat over one of them, as if she was saving it. I never asked her to do that. Match day came. I tore open the envelope in a room full of people screaming and hugging their parents. Ridgemont Memorial Hospital, trauma surgery residency. The same town my parents lived in. I didn't pick the program because of them. I picked it because Ridgemont Memorial runs the busiest Level 2 trauma center in the region. And if you want to learn how to keep people alive when everything's falling apart, you go where the falling apart happens most. First year of residency, 80-hour weeks. I ate cold pasta out of Tupperware in the supply closet. I slept in the on-call room more than my own bed. I learned to open a chest, clamp an aorta, and pack a liver in the time most people spend deciding what to order for dinner. Nobody from my family called. Not on Thanksgiving, not on Christmas, not on my birthday. I met Marcus in the 2nd year. He was a structural engineer surveying the new wing of the hospital. He ordered a black coffee in the cafeteria, sat down at my table because every other seat was taken, and asked me what I was reading. It was a surgical atlas. He said, "So you're the reason they keep paging overhead." I laughed for the first time in weeks. We got married in Aunt Ruth's backyard on a Saturday in September, 3 years into my residency. 30 guests, paper lanterns strung between 2 oak trees. Ruth's neighbor made the cake, lemon with buttercream, because Marcus said lemon was brave and I agreed. I walked down the grass aisle alone, no one on my arm, no father beside me. Marcus stood at the end in a gray suit, and when he saw me, he pressed his hand over his mouth and his eyes turned red. The officiant was a retired judge Ruth knew from church. The vows took 4 minutes. The dancing lasted until midnight. Ruth gave the only toast. She held up a mason jar of wine and said, "Family isn't just who you're born to, it's who shows up. And Irene, you've always shown up, even when nobody showed up for you." I smiled. I drank. I danced with my husband in the grass under those paper lanterns, and I told myself this was enough. But there was a chair at the head table that shouldn't have been empty, and a father who should have been standing where I stood alone. My mother didn't know I'd gotten married. Monica did. Ruth told me later that Monica had seen photos on a cousin's Facebook page. She never mentioned it to our parents. She never said a word. And here's what I didn't learn until much later. 2 years before my wedding, Aunt Ruth had called my mother and told her directly, "Irene is in residency. She's becoming a surgeon. She never dropped out." My mother asked Monica about it, and Monica said, "Ruth is lying. She's always been dramatic. She just wants to stir things up." My mother believed her. Again. Let me put numbers on what those 5 years cost me. I owed $187,000 in student loans. When my parents cut me off, I was halfway through medical school on a combination of their help and partial scholarships. After the phone call, I took out federal loans for every remaining dollar: tuition, rent, food, textbooks. Marcus and I lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner for the first 2 years of our marriage. The bedroom window didn't open all the way. We didn't care. But the money was the easy part. In Ridgemont, the Woolette name still meant something. My parents went to the same church they'd attended for 30 years. They had neighbors, friends, a whole social circle built over decades. And in that circle, the story went like this. Irene dropped out of school, broke her parents' hearts, and ran off with some man. Nobody called to confirm. Nobody asked my side. When I bumped into a former neighbor at the grocery store during my second year of residency, still in scrubs, badge clipped to my hip, she looked at me like I was a ghost. She said hello, but she didn't ask what I was doing there. She already had her version. And Monica? In those 5 years, she told my parents she was a marketing consultant, earning $60,000 a year. She was working part-time at a call center. She owed $28,000 in credit card debt. And she'd borrowed $15,000 from my parents' retirement savings. Money she told them was going toward paying off Irene's debts. There were no debts. There was only Monica, filling the space I'd left behind and making sure nobody looked too closely at what she was building there. I didn't know any of that yet. But the universe has a sense of timing, and its timing was about to become surgical. I want to pause here for a second. If you're listening to this and thinking, I know that feeling, when you send proof, you send truth, and the people who should love you most still choose someone else's version, drop one word in the comments. Porch. Just that one word. I want to know how many of you have stood in front of a closed door. And if this video is helping you process something of your own, share it. Sometimes someone else's story helps you finally tell yours. It was a Tuesday. 2:17 a.m. I just finished an emergency appendectomy on a 19-year-old college kid who'd waited 3 days to come in because he thought it was gas. I was washing my hands in the scrub room, running cold water over my knuckles, when the pager on my hip went off. Trauma activation. MVC. Female 30s. Internal bleeding. ETA 4 minutes. MVC. Motor vehicle collision. I dried my hands, grabbed a fresh pair of gloves, and walked fast down the corridor toward the trauma bay. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. 2 nurses were already setting up: Maria, who'd been on shift with me since 7, and a newer nurse named Kevin who always chewed gum during intubations, and I'd told him twice to stop. The ambulance bay doors opened. Cold air rushed in. 2 paramedics wheeled a stretcher through, moving quickly, one of them squeezing a bag valve over the patient's face. The woman on the stretcher was mid-30s, face swollen, a cervical collar around her neck, blood soaking through the sheet below her abdomen. 34-year-old female, unrestrained driver, T-bone collision at an intersection, the lead paramedic read off. GCS 8, BP 80/50, suspected splenic rupture, possible liver laceration, 2 large-bore IVs, 1 liter in. I stepped to the head of the stretcher. Let's move. Type and cross, 2 units O neg, and get the OR on standby. We may be going up. Behind me, past the double doors, I heard something. A woman crying. A man's voice, low and urgent, asking someone at the front desk where his daughter was. A name I couldn't quite make out. I didn't turn around. I had a patient. We moved her to the OR within 11 minutes. I scrubbed in again. This time longer, more deliberate, because abdominal trauma is a different animal. You open somebody up, and you don't always know what you're going to find. Sometimes the spleen is intact, and the liver is shredded. Sometimes everything looks fine until you move the bowel and there's a retroperitoneal bleed hiding behind the kidney. I made the incision. Midline laparotomy, navel to xiphoid. The moment I entered the peritoneal cavity, dark blood pooled, at least a liter already sitting in there. The spleen was pulped. I called for additional suction and started working. That's when I saw it. A small scar, low on the right side of the abdomen. An old appendectomy incision, not laparoscopic, the older open kind. I'd seen 1,000 of those. But this one was in a specific spot, slightly higher than standard, with a faint keloid ridge that I recognized the way you recognize handwriting. My eyes moved to her right forearm. A tattoo. Small. A butterfly, no bigger than a quarter faded blue-green ink. She'd gotten it at 18. I knew because I was there. I was 16, sitting in the waiting room of a strip mall parlor on Route 9, pretending to read a magazine while my older sister got her first tattoo and made me swear not to tell Mom. The scrub nurse looked at me. "Dr. Willette, you okay?" 2 seconds. I gave myself 2 seconds. "I'm fine. Suction. I need better visualization of the splenic hilum." My hands found the bleeding. Clamped. Cut. Sutured. My hands didn't shake. My hands saved her. My brain screamed the whole time, but my hands just did what I trained them to do. The patient on my table was Monica. The surgery took 2 hours and 14 minutes. I removed what was left of her spleen, repaired a 3-centimeter laceration on her liver, checked the bowel for perforation, washed the cavity, placed 2 drains, and closed. The anesthesiologist kept her stable the entire time. Vitals held. Blood pressure came back up. Heart rate settled. I stepped out of the OR at 4:47 a.m. Still in my surgical cap, gown spotted with blood, gloves in the biohazard bin behind me. My white coat was hanging on the hook outside the scrub room, where I always left it. I pulled it on. My name was embroidered over the left breast pocket in navy thread. Dr. I. Willette. Trauma surgery. I walked down the hallway toward the family waiting area. My shoes squeaked on the linoleum. The hallway was empty except for a custodian mopping near the elevator and a security guard scrolling his phone by the vending machine. They were sitting against the far wall. My mother on a plastic chair, hunched forward, her hands pressed together between her knees. My father standing beside her, one hand on her shoulder, the other gripping a styrofoam cup he hadn't drunk from. His hair was grayer. Her shoulders were smaller. 5 years had carved lines into both of them that I hadn't been there to watch form. I stopped 3 feet in front of them. "Family of Monica Willette?" My mother looked up. Her eyes went to my coat first. The name, the title, then up to my face. I watched her pupils widen. I watched recognition land like a physical blow. She grabbed my father's forearm, both hands, squeezed so hard her knuckles went white. 5 seconds of silence. Only the heart monitor down the hall. Only the fluorescent hum. "Irene?" My father's voice cracked on both syllables. "Monica is out of surgery. We removed her spleen and repaired a liver laceration. She's stable but critical. The next 24 hours are important." I delivered the update the way I deliver every update. Clear, calm. Because that's who I became in the 5 years they weren't watching. I called Aunt Ruth from the scrub room at 5:03 a.m. I'd gone back in to file my post-op notes and write a conflict of interest disclosure for the chief of surgery. My hands were steady on the keyboard. The rest of me was somewhere else entirely. Ruth picked up on the first ring the way she always does. Her voice was thick with sleep. "Irene, What's wrong? Monica was in a car accident tonight. She's at Ridgemont Memorial. I operated on her. A long breath. Then, you saved her? She had a ruptured spleen and a liver tear. She's in the ICU. She's alive. Lord. I heard Ruth sit up in bed, heard the creak of the mattress, the click of a lamp. And your parents? They're here, in the waiting area. They saw me. Another pause. How bad was it? The surgery went well. How bad was the look on your mother's face? I closed my eyes. The scrub room was cold and smelled like iodine. The fluorescent light above the sink flickered every 8 seconds. I'd been counting. She grabbed Dad's arm like she was drowning. I'm on my way. 3 hours. Ruth, you don't have to. Monica is my niece too. And you shouldn't be alone in that building with them. Not yet. I heard a closet door open, a zipper. She was already packing. Irene, you just saved the girl who destroyed your life. Don't let anyone in that hospital forget it. I didn't save my sister, Aunt Ruth. I saved my patient. I know, baby. That's exactly why it matters. She hung up. I sat in the scrub room for another 3 minutes, staring at the conflict of interest form on the screen. Then I submitted it, poured a cup of burnt coffee from the machine in the hallway, and went back to work. Ruth was bringing something with her. I didn't ask her to. She'd kept it for 5 years. A folder of printed emails I'd sent my parents the week they cut me off. The transcripts. The enrollment letter. Every piece of proof they said they never received. My father stood outside the ICU glass for a long time that morning. I know because the charge nurse, Linda, told me later. She said he pressed his forehead against the window and watched me check Monica's vitals, adjust her IV rate, speak with the overnight nurse about drain output. He watched me write notes in Monica's chart, answer a question from an intern, point to something on the monitor. He watched me work the way you watch someone you're trying to recognize. Linda said he stood there for almost 20 minutes before his wife pulled him back to the waiting chairs. And as he sat down, he said something that Linda overheard because the ICU hallway carries sound like a tunnel. She's a doctor, Dot. She's a real doctor. My mother said, Monica said, and my father did something he almost never did. He cut her off. Monica said a lot of things. It was the first crack, small, like a hairline fracture in a load-bearing wall. You don't hear it, but everything above it shifts. My father sat in that plastic chair and did the math I imagine he'd been avoiding for 5 years. 2 years ago, Ruth called and said Irene was in residency. A surgeon. They asked Monica. Monica said Ruth was lying, stirring up drama. And they believed her, because believing her was easier than the alternative. The alternative meant they'd thrown away the wrong daughter. Down the hall, a nurse from the night shift was talking to a day shift tech near the coffee station. I wasn't trying to listen, but hospitals are echo chambers. Dr. Woulette? She's one of our best. Chief resident last year. She's the one who stayed triple overnight during the pileup on I-71 last Christmas. My father was close enough to hear every word. I know because Linda saw him close his eyes. Monica opened her eyes at 9:15 the next morning. I wasn't in the room. I was down the hall finishing morning rounds. But the charge nurse paged me with a simple note. Your patient in 4 is awake. Family is present. My patient. Not my sister. In this building, she was bed 4. By the time I reviewed her chart from the nursing station, I could already hear voices through the glass. Monica's voice, weaker than I remembered, rougher from the intubation tube, but unmistakable. She always did sound like someone who expected to be listened to. My mother was explaining the accident. Monica had been driving home from a friend's house, ran a red light, maybe fell asleep, maybe checked her phone. A pickup truck hit the driver's side at 40 miles an hour. She'd been unconscious when the paramedics arrived. A surgeon saved you, my mother said carefully. I noticed she didn't use my name. Monica asked for water. Someone gave her ice chips. Then she saw the chart on the bedside table, the one the night nurse had left face up. Her surgeon's name printed across the top in block letters, Dr. E. Woulette. I watched through the glass as Monica stared at that name. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes moved to the door, then to our mother, then back to the chart. "Well," she said. "Good for her. She became a doctor." She set the chart down. "That doesn't change what she did to this family." There it was, the same playbook. 5 years of silence, a ruptured spleen, my sutures holding her liver together, and her first instinct was still to rewrite the story. My father was standing at the foot of the bed. I saw his hand grip the railing. "What exactly did she do, Monica?" I shouldn't have been watching. I had other patients, other charts, other responsibilities. But I stood at the nursing station with Monica's post-op orders in my hand, and I watched through the glass, because some part of me needed to see whether 5 years had changed anything inside that room. It hadn't. Monica shifted in her hospital bed, IVs in both arms, surgical drains running from her abdomen into collection bulbs pinned to the sheets. She abandoned us, Dad. 5 years, no calls, no holidays. She never called because we blocked her number, Monica. My father's voice was louder than I'd ever heard it in a hospital. The nurse at the station outside, Linda, looked up from her screen. "Because you told us to. I was protecting you. 2 years ago, Ruth called and said Irene was in residency, a surgeon. You told us Ruth was lying, that she was just trying to cause drama." 2 rooms down, a patient's wife looked up from her phone. A respiratory therapist carrying a ventilator circuit paused in the hallway. Sound travels in an ICU. Curtains aren't walls. Monica's monitor beeped faster. Her blood pressure ticked up. I could read it from outside the glass. 148/92. Not dangerous, but climbing. "Fine," Monica said. Her eyes glistened. The tears came on cue. The same practiced shimmer I'd seen 100 times growing up. "She's a doctor, great. But she's the one who walked away from her family. She drove 8 hours to our front door." Dad's hand was on the bed rail, knuckles white. "We didn't open it." My mother reached for Monica's hand. "Don't upset your sister, she just had surgery." Dad looked at Mom. "She had surgery from the daughter we threw away, Dot. Think about that." The heart monitor beeped. The IV dripped. And Monica, for maybe the first time in her adult life, had no script for what came next. Monica has always been loudest when she's cornered. It's a survival reflex. When the walls close in, she doesn't get quiet. She performs. She raised her voice just enough to carry past the glass partition, past the curtains, past the half-open door into the hallway where 2 nurses, a patient transport aide, and a resident I'd trained last year, were all within earshot. She abandoned her own parents for 5 years, didn't call on Christmas, didn't call when Dad had his knee surgery, and now she's playing hero because she happened to be on shift? The transport aide stopped walking. The resident, a second-year named Priya, glanced at me from the hallway. I kept my face neutral, kept reading Monica's chart. Potassium was low. I needed to order a supplement. "I bet she's loving this," Monica continued, her voice gaining that trembling, righteous edge she'd perfected by age 12. "Finally gets to be the good daughter. Finally gets her moment." My mother started nodding. It was a small thing, barely perceptible. An old reflex, worn smooth by years of agreeing with whatever Monica said. Because agreeing was easier than questioning, and questioning meant admitting something too heavy to hold. The nurses at the station knew me. Linda had worked with me for 3 years. Maria had held retractors during my first solo splenectomy as chief resident. Kevin, the gum-chewing nurse from last night, was charting 2 beds down. They knew I'd stayed 72 hours straight last Christmas when that highway pileup brought in 9 patients. They knew I sent flowers to patients after discharge. They knew exactly who I was. None of them said anything. They didn't need to. The silence was louder than Monica. Then she slipped. Mid-sentence, mid-performance, she said it. She always had to be better than me, even in school. She stopped. Her mouth closed. Her eyes flickered. She'd just admitted I was in school. Aunt Ruth walked into the ICU at 9:45 a.m. with a canvas bag over one shoulder, and a look on her face I'd seen exactly once before. The Thanksgiving she'd told our Uncle Frank to leave the table after he'd made a comment about her weight. Ruth doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. She walks into a room and the room adjusts. She looked at Monica in the hospital bed, looked at the IVs, the drains, the monitor. Then she looked at my mother. "Your daughter is alive because of the girl you threw out, Dorothy." My mother straightened. "Ruth, this isn't the time." "It's been 5 years. When exactly is the time?" Ruth set her bag on the chair by the window. She unzipped it and pulled out a manila folder, creased, soft at the edges, the way paper gets when it's been carried a long time. She placed it on the rolling table beside Monica's bed and opened it. 3 printed emails. The ones I'd sent my parents the week they cut me off. The first was a screenshot of my semester transcript, 4 courses, grades listed. The second was my enrollment verification letter, signed by the registrar, dated October 14th, 2020. The third was the email itself. "Mom, please, I'm still in school. I haven't dropped out. Please call me. I can explain everything." "These are the emails Irene sent you 5 years ago," Ruth said evenly. "You told me you never received them." My mother's hand moved toward the folder, then stopped. Her fingers hovered over the transcript, like it might burn her. "Monica told you Irene faked these. She said anyone can Photoshop a transcript." Ruth looked at Monica. "Isn't that what you said?" Monica said nothing. The heart monitor filled the silence with its steady, mechanical rhythm. My father picked up the enrollment letter. His hands trembled. He read it once, turned it over as if expecting something different on the back, then read it again. "Monica." His voice was sandpaper. "You told us these were fake." I was trying to protect." "Tell them about the money, Monica," Ruth said. The room went still. Even the IV pump seemed to pause. "I don't know what she's talking about," Monica said, but her voice pitched higher. The confident tremor was gone. This was a different kind of shaking. Ruth kept her eyes on my parents. "Monica has been telling you she's a marketing consultant making $60,000 a year. She works part-time at a call center. She owes $28,000 in credit card debt." Ruth let that sit for 3 seconds. "And she borrowed $15,000 from your retirement savings. She told you it was to help cover Irene's debts." "That's not—" Monica started. "Irene doesn't have debts to you, Monica. She has student loans. Federal loans she took out because you got her cut off from her parents' support halfway through medical school." My father set the enrollment letter down on the bedside table. His face had changed. Something behind it had collapsed, like a building losing its foundation. He looked at Monica. "Is it true? The retirement money?" Monica's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. The heart monitor beeped faster, 152/96. A nurse glanced in from the hallway. My mother lowered herself into the bedside chair. Slowly, carefully, the way you sit when your legs decide for you. She stared at the emails on the table. She stared at her oldest daughter. And for the first time in 5 years, the expression on my mother's face wasn't certainty. It was doubt. "You told me she faked these," my mother whispered. Monica looked at the ceiling. "Mom, I was scared." "Scared of what? Your sister passing her exams?" I watched my mother's face through the ICU glass, the way I watch a patient's vitals after a risky procedure, looking for signs of something breaking. She picked up the transcript printout, held it close to her face, as if the font were too small, even though it wasn't. She read every line: course names, credit hours, grades, the university seal in the corner, the date stamp, fall semester 2020. The same semester Monica had called her in tears and said I'd dropped out 6 months prior. The math didn't work. It had never worked. The transcript was proof that I was enrolled in passing classes during the exact time Monica claimed I'd quit. 5 years ago, if my mother had spent 30 seconds looking at this piece of paper, truly looking, everything would have been different. She set it down. Her hands were shaking. 5 years, she said. Not to anyone in particular, just to the room. 5 years, and you let me… Monica cut in fast. Mom, you have to understand. I was going through a hard time. I wasn't thinking clearly. I missed her wedding. My mother's voice cracked on the word wedding. I missed my daughter's wedding. Outside the glass, two nurses exchanged a look. Down the hall, a tech carrying a portable X-ray machine slowed his pace. Sound carries. I've said that already, but it's worth saying again, because in a hospital, the walls listen, and the people inside them talk. By noon, the story had traveled through the ICU, into the surgical floor, down to the ER, and across to the cafeteria. Nobody needed to announce anything. The staff at Ridgemont Memorial had watched me work for 5 years. They'd watched me show up, stay late, teach, study, operate, and never once mention my family. Now they understood why. The truth didn't need me to defend it. It just needed a room with no exits. If you're wondering why I didn't scream, why I didn't walk into that room and say everything I'd been holding for 5 years, I get it. But I learned something in the operating room. Screaming doesn't stop the bleeding. Precision does. If you've ever had to swallow your anger to keep your dignity intact, leave a comment. I read every single one. And hit subscribe. Because this story isn't over. The part that changed me most is still coming. I waited until 2 p.m. to do my rounds on Monica's room. I had 6 other patients, a gallbladder in room 7, a bowel obstruction in room 12, an elderly man in room 9 who kept calling me sweetheart and asking when he could go home. I gave them my full attention. When it was time for room 4, I picked up Monica's chart, straightened my coat, and walked in. The room had changed. Ruth was sitting by the window, reading something on her phone. My mother was in the corner chair, eyes swollen, clutching a tissue she'd shredded into confetti. My father stood near the door, arms crossed, staring at the floor. Monica lay in bed, face turned toward the wall. Good afternoon. I'm here to check your post-op status. I spoke to Monica the way I speak to every patient. Clear, direct, warm enough to be human, professional enough to keep distance. I checked her incision site, palpated her abdomen gently, reviewed the drain output recorded by the morning nurse. Vitals are improving. White count is trending down, which is good. Means no infection so far. We'll keep monitoring the drain. If everything looks stable in 48 hours, we'll talk about moving you to a regular room. Monica didn't look at me. Thank you, she said to the wall. That's my job. My mother stood up. Irene. I turned to her with the same expression I give any family member in any room. Pleasant, steady, impenetrable. Mrs. Willett, if you have questions about the procedure, I can arrange for a patient liaison to speak with you. They're available until 5. Mrs. Willett, not Mom. I saw the word land. I saw her flinch. I made a note in the chart, nodded to Ruth, and left the room. 12 seconds. That's how long my mother stood there before she sat back down. My father caught up with me halfway down the hall. I heard his footsteps, heavier than they used to be, slightly uneven from the knee surgery Monica had mentioned and I hadn't known about. Irene, please. I stopped walking. I didn't turn around right away. I let myself take one breath. Then I faced him. He looked old. That's the thought I couldn't stop. My father had always been big. Broad shoulders, thick hands, the kind of man who could carry a couch up a flight of stairs without asking for help. Standing in that hospital corridor under the fluorescent lights, he looked like someone had let the air out of him. 5 minutes, he said. That's all I'm asking. Dad, I can't do this here. I have patients. When then? My eyes stung. I blinked it away. I don't know, but not in this hallway. Not while I'm wearing this coat. And not until you understand the full picture. All of it. Not just the parts that hurt less. He nodded. Slowly. The way a man nods when he knows he has no right to argue. Okay, he said. Okay, Irene. He stepped back. I turned and walked toward the nurse's station. My sneakers squeaked on the linoleum. Behind me, I heard him exhale, a long, unsteady breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. As I rounded the corner, I passed the hospital's staff bulletin board. Pinned in the center, behind a sheet of plexiglass, was a framed photo with gold lettering. Employee of the Quarter, Dr. Irene Woulette. The photo showed me at a departmental event, smiling, stethoscope draped around my neck. It had been there for 2 months. I barely noticed it anymore. My father stopped in front of it. Linda told me later he stood there reading it for a full minute before he walked back to the waiting area. I made it to the on-call room before anything cracked, closed the door, leaned against it, and slid down until I was sitting on the floor with my knees against my chest. The room was 8 feet by 10, a twin mattress on a metal frame, a plastic chair, a lamp with a crooked shade. I'd slept in this room more nights than I could count. It smelled like industrial soap and exhaustion. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. Hey, bad shift? I operated on Monica last night. 3 seconds of silence. I heard him set something down. A coffee mug, probably. Tell me. Car accident, ruptured spleen, liver laceration. She's stable. She's in the ICU. Are you okay? I looked at my hands, palms up, resting on my knees. These hands had spent 2 hours inside my sister's abdomen, repairing the damage, tying off bleeders, saving the organ function she'd need to survive. In the OR, they'd been perfectly still. Now, under the fluorescent light of the on-call room, they were trembling. My hands were fine in there, I said. Everything else, I don't know. I'm coming. 20 minutes. Marcus, you don't have to. 20 minutes. He showed up in 18. He brought coffee, real coffee, not the hospital machine stuff. He sat down next to me on the floor, his back against the wall, his shoulder pressed against mine. He didn't say, "It'll be okay." He didn't say, "You should talk to them." He didn't say anything at all for the first 5 minutes. He just sat there, solid and warm and present, the way a foundation holds up a building without anyone noticing until you take it away. You don't have to figure out how to feel right now, he finally said. You just have to let yourself feel it. I leaned my head against his shoulder and let myself feel it. Over the next 2 days, the story moved through Ridgemont Memorial the way all hospital stories do, not through announcements or drama, but through quiet conversations at shift change, murmured exchanges in the break room, and the particular way people looked at me when they passed me in the hallway. I didn't confirm anything. I didn't deny it either. I just worked. I rounded on my patients. I reviewed labs. I updated families. I taught a second-year resident how to place a chest tube and didn't raise my voice when he nicked the intercostal artery on his first attempt. The chief of surgery, Dr. Hendricks, called me into his office on the second day. He's a 63-year-old man with a gray beard and a framed photo of his grandchildren on his desk, and he's been running the department for 19 years. He doesn't waste words. I've reviewed your conflict of interest disclosure. Your conduct was exemplary. No other trauma surgeon was available for that case. You followed protocol to the letter. He leaned back in his chair. For what it's worth, Irene, I've worked with a lot of surgeons. You're one of the few I'd trust with my own family on that table. Thank you, sir. Is there anything you need from the department? Time off? A referral to employee assistance? I'm fine. I'd rather keep working. He nodded like he understood, because he probably did. That evening, Linda, the charge nurse who'd been on shift with me that night, left a turkey sandwich and a bag of chips on the counter of the nurse's station with a sticky note. For Dr. W. You haven't eaten since yesterday. L. I ate the sandwich standing up between checking Monica's evening labs. Her white cell count was dropping. No signs of infection. Drain output decreasing. She was healing. The body, at least, was cooperating. Everything else remained open. 3 days after surgery, my mother found me in the cafeteria. I was sitting alone at a corner table with a tray of food I was mostly pushing around with a fork, reading a journal article on my phone about laparoscopic spleen salvage techniques. She stood across from me holding a paper cup of tea like a shield. "Can we talk?" I set my phone down. "I have 12 minutes before rounds." She sat. The chair scraped against the floor. She wrapped both hands around her tea, and I noticed her nails were bitten down, a habit she'd kicked 20 years ago. Apparently it was back. "I didn't know, Irene. I swear to God I didn't know." I looked at her, really looked. The dark circles, the red rims around her eyes, the way her lips pressed together between sentences, holding back whatever was trying to escape. "You had every opportunity to know," I said. "I sent you emails with my transcript attached. Aunt Ruth called you and told you the truth, directly, 2 years before tonight. You chose not to know. That's different from not knowing. Monica is your... Monica lied. You believed her. You blocked my number. You didn't come to my graduation. You didn't come to my wedding. You missed every single milestone of my adult life because it was easier to trust the daughter standing in front of you than to pick up the phone and verify what the other one was saying." Her cup shook. Tea spilled over the rim onto her fingers. She didn't wipe it. "She's still your sister," my mother said, quietly, almost a reflex. I stood up, picked up my tray. "And I'm still your daughter. But you forgot that first." I walked away. My 12 minutes were up. Monica was discharged on a Thursday morning, 6 days after surgery. I signed the discharge papers myself, standard procedure for the attending surgeon. Reviewed her medications, her wound care instructions, her follow-up appointments. A packet of papers, neatly stapled, placed in a folder with the hospital logo. I walked into her room for the final time. Ruth had already left the day before. She'd hugged me in the parking lot and whispered, "Call me whenever you need to. Day or night. I mean it." My father was carrying Monica's overnight bag. My mother was adjusting Monica's jacket over the arm that still had a peripheral IV bruise. "Your discharge instructions are in the folder," I said. "Follow up with your primary care physician in 1 week and with our surgical clinic in 2. No heavy lifting for 6 weeks. If you develop fever, increased pain, or redness at the incision site, come back to the ER immediately." Monica looked at me. Her face was thinner than when she'd come in, cheeks hollowed from 6 days of hospital food and whatever was happening inside her that had nothing to do with the surgery. "I guess you're the hero now," she said. "I'm not a hero, Monica. I'm a surgeon. You were my patient. That's it." She held my gaze for a beat too long, then, quiet enough that only I could hear, "If you hadn't been on shift, some other doctor would have saved me." Maybe. But some other doctor wasn't on shift. I was, and I did it anyway. She looked away. My father, standing by the door with her bag, met my eyes. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me the way you look at someone you're trying to memorize. My mother wheeled Monica toward the elevator. The chair squeaked on the tile. Nobody said thank you. Monica's hospital bill came to $47,000. She had no insurance. My parents, the ones whose retirement fund was already $15,000 lighter, would be the ones writing the checks. 2 weeks passed. I went back to my routines: morning rounds, afternoon surgeries, evening charting, home to Marcus and our golden retriever, Hippo, who greeted me every night like I'd returned from war. Which, some nights, wasn't far off. Marcus didn't push. He asked once if I wanted to talk about it, and when I said, "Not yet," he said, "Okay," and handed me a bowl of pasta. That's the thing about Marcus. He knows the difference between patience and passivity. He wasn't waiting for me to be ready. He was making sure I knew the door was open whenever I chose to walk through it. My father called on a Saturday morning. I was on the couch, still in pajamas, drinking coffee and watching Hippo chase a squirrel through the window. "Irene, it's Dad." As if I wouldn't recognize his number after 5 years of not seeing it on my screen. "Hi, Dad." I went to a therapist yesterday. First time in my life. His voice was careful, like he was reading from a script he'd practiced. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. I set my coffee down. That's a start. Can I take you to lunch? Just me, not your mother, not yet, just father and daughter. Okay, neutral ground. The cafe on Elm Street. Saturday, noon. Thank you, Irene. Dad? I watched Ipo press his nose against the glass, tail wagging at a squirrel that had no idea it was being adored. Don't thank me yet. We have a lot of ground to cover. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I know we do. And Irene, I know I should have opened that door. I've thought about it every day since the hospital. I was afraid that if Monica lied, then everything I did was something I couldn't take back. It is something you can't take back. But that doesn't mean we can't build something forward. The cafe on Elm Street is a small place with chipped wooden tables and mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu that hasn't changed in years. I picked it because it's 3 blocks from the hospital, and I've eaten there enough times that the waitress knows my order. Familiar ground. My ground. Dad arrived 20 minutes early. I know because the waitress told me when I walked in. Right on time. Your father's been sitting there since 11:40, ordered a water and hasn't touched it. He stood up when he saw me. Hesitated. His arms moved slightly, the beginning of a hug that he caught himself mid-gesture and converted into an awkward nod. I sat down across from him. He looked different from the man in the hospital hallway. He'd shaved, ironed his shirt, and he'd brought something. A photograph, face down on the table next to his water glass. He slid it toward me. My wedding photo. Marcus and me in Ruth's backyard, paper lanterns above us, his hand on the small of my back, both of us laughing at something the photographer had said. Ruth must have sent it to him. She gave it to me last year, he said. I've kept it in my wallet. I looked at the photo. I looked at the empty space beside me in the frame, the space where a father would have stood. Then I looked at my father, sitting across from me in a cafe, holding a water glass with both hands to keep them still. You should have been there, I said. I know. I walked down that aisle alone, Dad. I know. His voice broke on the second word. He pressed his lips together. I will spend the rest of my life knowing that. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We ordered lunch. He got the turkey club, I got the soup. And we talked. Carefully. Like people learning a new language. I set the terms. We meet once a month. Just us. If it goes well, maybe Mom eventually. But Monica? That's separate. I'm not ready for that. He agreed without argument. He'd lost the right to argue 5 years ago, and he knew it. My mother didn't call. I think someone, Ruth probably, or maybe Dad, told her I wasn't ready for that yet. So she did something I didn't expect. She wrote a letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, hand-addressed, no return name, just the Ridgemont postmark. I recognized the handwriting immediately. My mother has always written in small, tight cursive, every letter leaning slightly to the right, as if the words were in a hurry to get somewhere. I opened it at the kitchen table with Marcus reading beside me. Ipo was asleep on my feet. Irene, I'm not going to pretend I understand everything yet. I don't. But I know I failed you. I know I chose comfort over truth, and I know I don't get to decide when you're ready to hear from me. Your father showed me the photo from your wedding. You looked beautiful. You looked strong. You looked like someone I didn't raise, because I wasn't there to raise you into the woman you became. You did that yourself. I should have been there. I should have believed you. I should have opened the door that Sunday when you drove 8 hours to stand on our porch. I heard you knocking. I was in the kitchen. I told your father not to answer. I'm sorry. Not for how I feel. I loved you every day of those 5 years, even when I was too stubborn and too afraid to show it. I'm sorry for what I did, for what I didn't do, for all the things I let Monica tell me instead of finding out for myself. You don't have to write back, but I wanted you to know. Mom. I read the letter 3 times. Marcus looked up from his book. Are you going to write back? Not yet. I folded the letter along its original creases and placed it in the drawer of my nightstand. But I'm keeping it. 2 weeks later, Ruth told me something else. My mother had asked Monica to return the $15,000 from the retirement fund. Monica refused, and for the first time in 34 years, my mother cut off Monica's financial support. A month after the surgery, my phone rang at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. Monica's number. I stared at it for 4 rings, then let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message 20 minutes later, sitting on the back porch while Marcus grilled chicken and hippo supervised from the lawn. Her voice was different, smaller. The performance quality was gone, no trembling courage, no rehearsed emotion. She sounded like someone sitting alone in a room trying to figure out what honest sounds like. I'm not going to say I'm sorry, because you wouldn't believe me anyway. And honestly, I don't think I've earned the right to that word yet. A pause. I could hear her breathing. I started therapy. A real one. Not the kind where I tell the therapist what I think they want to hear. The kind where she makes me sit with the things I don't want to look at. Another pause. Longer this time. I don't expect you to call me back. I don't expect anything. But I want you to know that I'm trying not to be the person who did that to you. I don't know if I'll get there, but I'm trying. The voicemail ended. I set the phone on the porch railing and watched the sky turn orange over the rooftops. I didn't call her back. I didn't delete the message either. Some people might think that's cold. Maybe it is. But I spent 5 years being the daughter who tried, who called, who emailed, who drove 8 hours, who stood on a porch in the cold, and none of it mattered. I'm done auditioning for people to believe I'm worth something. If Monica is changing, she'll show it. With time, with consistency, with actions that don't require an audience. Words are cheap in this family. They always have been. Show me with time. It's a Sunday morning. I'm standing at the stove in our kitchen, flipping French toast while Marcus reads the news on his tablet and Hippo thumps his tail against the floor every time a piece of bread hits the pan. There are 2 plates on the counter. Next week, there'll be 3. Dad is coming for lunch. Our 4th monthly meeting. The last one, he brought pictures from when I was little. Me in a lab coat for Halloween, age 7, with a toy stethoscope around my neck. He said he found it in the attic, and that looking at it was the first time he cried about what happened. I told him crying was a start, but it wasn't a finish. He nodded and ate his sandwich and didn't push for more. Mom and I don't know the word for it. We're not reconciled. We're not estranged. We're somewhere in between, which might be the most honest place 2 people can be when trust has been shattered and one of them is still figuring out how to hold the pieces. I haven't written back to her letter yet, but I reread it last week. That's something. Monica started therapy, her own, separate from anything involving our parents. I know this because Ruth told me, and because Monica mentioned it in a second voicemail I haven't returned. I'm not ready to sit across from her. I may never be, but I no longer carry her like a weight I'm required to hold. She is her own problem now, and for the first time, she seems to be trying to solve it. I still owe $187,000 in student loans. Marcus and I still live in our 1-bedroom apartment, though we've been looking at houses, something with a yard big enough for Hippo and maybe, eventually, a kid or 2. I still work 80-hour weeks sometimes. I still fall asleep in the on-call room with my shoes on. But here's what's different. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, accomplished enough, proved myself enough, the people who were supposed to love me would come back. That my value was something I had to earn, over and over, in a courtroom where the verdict was always pending. I don't think that anymore. My value was never on trial. The people who couldn't see it, that was their blindness, not my failure. It's not perfect. It's not the childhood I deserved or the reconciliation that movies promise. But it's real. And real is more than I had for a very long time. My name is Dr. Irene Woulette. I'm 31 years old. I am a trauma surgeon. I am a wife, and I am, slowly, carefully, on my own terms, letting myself be someone's daughter again. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's this. You don't have to set the truth on fire for people to see it. You just have to keep living it. Eventually, the light reaches even the people who close their eyes. And if it doesn't, you still have the light. That's my story. If it touched something in you, if it made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, or someone you've lost and might be finding your way back to, leave me a comment. Tell me, what would you have done? Would you have opened that door? Would you have picked up Monica's call? And if you want more stories like this one, I've left a link in the description to a video I think you'll connect with just as much. Thank you for being here, I mean that.